Democrat you admire?
A Democrat that I admire.
That takes some deep thought for you, right?
It does take deep thought, but a man that I thought was, as history is looking back now, I think John Kennedy. John Kennedy showed absolutely remarkable resilience and resistance to the fact during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I was off the coast of Mayport, Florida during the Cuban Missile Crisis, ready to invade the island. I was on a ship in case something happened. But there were hawks in that administration that they were calling for the bombing, if you will, in Cuba, confrontation with Russia, and this young president stood his ground. He stood his ground. And also, again, the tax cuts. He had a lot of Republican in him, and some Democrats, I think, would admit that. But he cut taxes. He got this economy rolling again. Of course, we know the tragedy in his life. But John Kennedy was a man that I think had the right idea for this country.
How are you different from Larry Kissel?
I wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Larry, you know, I want to say this about Larry Kissel. Larry's a school teacher. My wife taught school for 15 years, a very honorable profession. I respect that very much. Larry seems to be a nice guy, but he's on the wrong side of the issues now. And he knows it. He didn't vote for health care. He got a pass from Nancy Pelosi, but he voted to close debate and bring it to the floor for a vote. And he didn't impress Republicans by doing that. And Democrats are mad at it. In fact, he even had a primary. But this issue, this is going to come down to what the people in the 8th District and merely all across this great land of ours say. Are we tired of the direction we're headed? Because if Nancy Pelosi is back in as Speaker of the House, we're going to continue down the same road, Dave. We're going to be spending trillions and trillions of dollars with no end in sight. We can stop it. It's up to the people of the 8th District and all across our great land to say, you know what, we've had enough. You've been given your chance. Now we're going to take over and we're going to do the right things and get this country physically sound again.
Don't you think it's more than Nancy Pelosi, though, in Congress? I know you mentioned Nancy Pelosi, and she's a lightning rod of criticism sometimes, but isn't it more than just Nancy Pelosi on Capitol Hill?
Well, it is more than that, and it's the entire administration that we're looking at right now. But she's, if you will, she's carrying the water for the President of the United States. I mean, she's doing his bidding right now, and that's part of her job. I understand, as Harry Reid does his in the Senate. They're in charge, and you have to accept that fact, that they are in charge and they can do whatever they want. They have what they need to do that. But again, it still comes down to just the whole attitude of what we're seeing in Washington. There's no restraint whatsoever.
Did you grow up in a conservative home? What was your home like?
No, I didn't. I grew up in a Democratic family.
What's happened to you?
What's happened to me, they say. But I got out of the Marine Corps in 1964. That was when Johnson put a thumping on Goldwater. And then from 64 to 68, things just changed. I started working and looked at a paycheck and said, what's going on with this? And gradually things changed. And I voted, Richard Nixon was the first president I voted for. I voted in every presidential election since 68, but he was the first Republican that I voted for.
Do you regret that vote?
No, I don't, because he did open up trade with China. He did a wonderful job. He was poorly advised, and he wasn't surrounded by good people looking out for his best interest. He was paranoid. We found that out later as well. But I think he had people, Ehrlichman, Haldeman, people around him that were looking out for their own special interest instead of looking out and giving him the good advice that he needed. Watergate, the tragedy that it was, why did it have to happen? He was going to win the election anyway. It should have never even happened, and who knows?
How are you different from Tim D'Annunzio?
I got to say this about Tim. I've gotten to know him over the last 6 months. I know he loves his country. I have no doubt that the fervor he feels in love for this great country. He served in the Army, and of course I did in the Marine Corps, and I respect him very much for that. It's been a very tough race. It's very demanding. Politics is a contact sport, Dave. I found that out. But I think people have to look at our demeanor. They have to look at both of us. The vote's coming up next Tuesday. And they have to say which one of these candidates, Republicans have to decide, is it going to be Harold Johnson or is it going to be Tim D'Annunzio? Who can best represent the 8th District in Washington and be an effective representative? And I think if you look at me with my background, with the history of where I've conducted myself during this campaign, I haven't lost my temper. I don't do that. I'll discuss the issues and talk about things as well. And I think, and I would hope that they would say Harold Johnson's going to get our vote. And I think that we can do very well against Larry Kissel in the fall.
You don't believe he has the temperament to be a member of Congress?
I think he has to work on that, Dave. You can't go to Washington and want to tear down the entire government. That would never work. And you can't fly off the handle and just almost out of control. But again, he said he's going to probably vote for me. He said, I'm going to have to hold my nose, but I'll probably vote for Harold. He said that. And I hope he meant that because I would truly need his vote and I would need his supporters. I know where they come from. I know that they're angry and upset with the government and the way things are going right now, but I think it's best if they would look at a Republican and say, isn't it better to have a Republican in there with a chance of a new speaker and not have Nancy Pelosi in for 4 more years of what? I'll tell you what, we're going to see an amnesty bill. If Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House, I'm guaranteeing you, write this down, within 3 months after January, 1st of the year, you're going to see an amnesty bill come through the Congress. The President wanted that a couple of months ago. There was some talk of floating something there, and I think members of our own party said, no, we can't go there with that yet, not this year. But you'll see something coming along with an amnesty bill if she is the Speaker.
This is the highest number of times I've heard Nancy Pelosi mentioned on this program in any one interview.
She's 70 years old. She's a grandmother, and I'm sure she's a very loving grandmother. And I respect that, absolutely, Dave. I'm not slamming her for personal life. I'm just questioning, which I think we all have a right to do, about where we're taking the country. She is showing, as she said when the health care bill, we're just opening the door, which meant spending, spending, spending.
Tim D'Annunzio, getting back to him, I sat down with him and he said 2 things about you. He said, I don't think those things do anything to tell the voters the truth about who I am. And he's talking about some of the comments that have been made about his past. He goes on to say, I think Carol Johnson has done such damage to the unity, reinforcing everything we thought was wrong with the party. How do you respond to those comments from him? Number one, do you believe that Tim D'Annunzio's past is fair game?
I think it is, and let's remember something now. I've been the hammer, not the hammer, I've been the nail for 5 months going up to the primary. I did not run one negative ad throughout the primary. I said we're going to go down a positive road, positive message, which is what I did throughout that first primary. I did no negative ads whatsoever. Second primary, when he was really coming after me, I think he's got something out there now, one ad saying I never voted. I never voted. Well, that's not true. Check with the Idaho County Board of Elections, and they'll tell you, yeah, Harold's been very consistent with his voting. And I think when it's public record, the door is open. I think Tim had to know going in that the past is going to be discussed, Dave. It always is when you open the book. You look at the pages and you say, well, what do we see? Flip them over. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say things I did in the past, maybe we shouldn't be talking about that. No. And again, he's a good father, and I think down deep he's a good man as well. But these are issues that are documented. I didn't talk about anything that was not factually fact. Court documents, Dave, that were there. And if I didn't bring it up or talk about it, which he did too, by the way, he talked about it. You know, if he got the nomination, the Democrats would bring that out full bore, in week 1.